Hey guys, Sebastian from Panthera Motorsports. I'm super happy to be launching today the new electric starter kit for the trx250r. It's going to be fitting both the atc250r water-cooled gear as well as all the gears of the trx250r. So what we have here today is a 431cc 16:1 high compression engine, so it's perfect candidate for the electric start. If you've ever tried to kickstart one of these, it's not fun. So we're going to be installing it on the engine. So first step obviously is to remove the parts we're not going to be needing anymore. So flywheel cover is where the electric start is going to go. For ease, just remove your shifter as well, and we're going to reinstall another one afterward. So the electric starter kit is going to be run on the flywheel of the bike itself. It runs through a flange that adapts to the flywheel and receives the starter gears on it. I know some of you guys run the trx250r original flywheel, some run the cr250 flywheel. So we have designed both flanges available for you guys, whatever ignition you have on the bike. So obviously we're going to remove the flywheel nut since it's not going to be used anymore. So it's a 17mm nut. We're going to be installing the starter flange on top of the flywheel. The flange has two locator pins made to fit inside the pre-made hole in the original flywheel. So simply align the tab on top of the flywheel like that. Sometimes maybe the holes are dirty or something, just clean them up and make sure it fits good. Might be a little tight, you can just hammer it in, but this one fitted pretty nicely. So we're going to be installing then the one-way clutch, which is a gear with the one-way roller in it. Simply rotate it clockwise actually to make it fit on the starter flange, just like that. It just goes on. This gear just rolls clockwise and lock counterclockwise. There's also a needle bearing that goes in the middle, and then the bolting unit is just centering everything and holding everything together. So we're going to be torquing the one-way unit at 70 foot-pound. Just make sure that the taper of the flywheel sits properly on the crank, since it's the taper itself that's going to be receiving the starting force as we start the engine with the electric start. So we're supplying you with a tool to hold the gear with a simple half-inch ratchet to just hold the gear in place. Align the teeth of the tool, and with torque wrench, simply tight it in place. Perfect. Make sure it still rotates, that it's not squeezed up. All good. So we're gonna be now installing the cover itself on the engine. To make it easier to align the teeth of the gears and all that, we just recommend to take the smaller gear out of the cover itself and then put them back afterward. So the starter housing also has a central bearing in it. It has two main goals. The first one is to center the starter housing to the one-way gear, so to just keep all the force inside the cover when the starting force is going on. It also helps a lot stabilizing your crankshaft, so there's not going to be as much flexing and bending from vibration. So it's actually going to help your crankshaft live longer as well. So don't forget the supplied gasket on the housing, and center the bearing to the bolting unit. Just slide it on. There we go. So we're supplying you as well with 5 bolts, socket head, 5mm Allen. Just put the bolts in place. All right, so torquing the bolts, we recommend to go to 110 inch-pound just because it seals better the gasket a little bit. So one by one, let's torque them up. So as mentioned before, the starter housing is going to now be running with oil in it. It doesn't change anything for the stator itself or the ignition. It runs perfectly with oil in the assembly. We recommend to put some ATF oil in it because it's made to foam and cover all the gears in the one-way bearing. So that's what we recommend. So a 300 milliliter of ATF oil in the assembly before you put the gears back on. Right. We're now ready to reinstall the smaller gears. Make sure once again that the main gear is rotating freely clockwise. Just make sure that nothing is pressuring the one-way gear. So we can reinstall both gear, the top one first. And then we're gonna put the second one. It might require, just because you need to mesh both top and bottom gear, to rotate teeth by teeth just to try to find meshing between the two. This one went in perfectly. You can put your gear cap back on, gasket on as well. There we go. Supply bolts are button head, which you're going to require a 4mm Allen socket to put on. You can put some Loctite on these if you want to make sure during a long ride you don't have them come loose. Torque spec is going to be 90 inch-pound for these. So the starter housing has a vent installed at the back. It's made to relieve pressure from oil while the engine heats up. So you're going to find in your kit a hose just to be installed on the vent and run to a high point on the bike and just secure it with zip tie. So you can run it where the radiator hose goes or something like that. Simply run it next to the cables, the carburetor feed. Simple as that. We're going to be putting it up to the chassis and just run it where the radiator hose goes. So all pretty much left to do is to connect the electric motor. For this video, we've pre-installed the wiring that is supplied with the kit as well as the battery box and battery. It's just running the wires on the frame and zip tying it there. Pretty interesting thing now. It's been challenging to design the electric start for the trx250r. For one thing, the OEM ignition, the original ignition from the trx250r, only starts doing a spark at around 900 to 1000 RPM, which was really challenging to make the electric start spin as fast. That's why you need such a good kick to be able to fire up that engine on the original ignition. So for both the trx250r and other big kits we do like the CR500, we came up with a new battery solution, which is a battery unit that charges 12 volts and discharges 24 volts to the electric motor. So for such a big motor, especially with the OEM ignition, it is required to get that battery pack. For bikes smaller CCs and with the CR250 ignition, which fires up at much lower RPM, you can get away with a standard 8-cell 12-volt battery. So the wiring harness itself, which is right now already installed, has 2 wires going to the electric motor. One is a ground, so proper grounding going directly to the battery to make sure that you don't rely on the chassis to have ground to your electric motor. You know, painted chassis, etc. can prevent from a good ground to get to the electric motor. So you're gonna be bolting the black wire, the ground, to the lower bolt mount of the electric motor. There's a space in between the motor and the housing to run the wire, so we're gonna run it right there, and we're gonna put it on that bolt, and then the power, the red wire, will go on the positive terminal of the electric motor. All right, only the positive terminal left. Red wire goes to the electric motor. So you could take time to retorque the 2 bolts of the electric motor as well to a 90 inch-pound. Right. Just put the protector on top of the terminal right there. Just need to put shifter back on. We're supplying you with offset shifter just because of the new bearing and one-way gear. The cover is a little thicker, so you're going to get a new shifter with the kit, or you can modify your own and just make sure you have the clearance for the new cover, and that's about it. All right, seems we're ready to go. Let's put the choke on. Let's try that. There we go.